Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at Spion Kop Cemetery in Hartlepool. Nestled on the high grounds of the Headlands in Hartlepool, Spion Kop Cemetery is one of those places that quietly holds a lot of history. It's not the sort of spot that draws crowds or headlines, but for those who wander up here, it offers something quite special. A blend of sea views, heritage and calm reflection. The name Spion Kop has its roots far from Hartlepool. It comes from a hill in South Africa that was the site of a fierce battle during the Boer War in 1900. British soldiers fought there in tough, steep terrain, and the name became widely known afterwards. Used across Britain to describe any raised ground or vantage point. So when this part of Hartlepool Headland was used as a cemetery, the name Spion Kop naturally followed because of its position overlooking the sea and the town. Walking through the entrance, you immediately sense that this is not just an ordinary burial ground. There's a quiet dignity to the place. Rows of headstones, some standing straight up and others weathered by time, all arranged neatly against the backdrop of the sea air and the open sky. The sound of the gulls, the wind moving across the grass, the faint hum of the town below, all come together in a sort of soft background soundtrack that feels timeless. The cemetery was first established in the early 20th century, and many of the earliest burials date back to the years around the First World War. In fact, Spion Kop Cemetery is perhaps best known for its military connections. Within its grounds lie the graves of soldiers and sailors who served during both World Wars. Some died in action, others passed away later from wounds or illnesses. One of the most striking features here is the row of Commonwealth war graves, commission headstones. These distinctive pale markers that appear in cemeteries across the world. They stand together in quiet formation, their engravings, often simple but deeply moving. Each name tells a story. A young man far from home, a sailor lost to a naval attack, or a soldier who didn't make it back after the bombardment of the Hartlepools in 1914. That bombardment is an important chapter in the town's history, and it's felt very much here. On the morning of the 16th December 1914, German warships appeared off the coast and began shelling Hartlepool. It was one of the first attacks on British soil during the First World War and caused widespread damage and loss of life. Many of those killed, both civilians and servicemen, were laid to rest right here on the headland, and their graves can still be found today. Some of the inscriptions are faded, but if you take your time and read them carefully, they reveal personal details that make history feel real again. A boy of just 17, a father of 3, a gunner who served aboard HMS Doon, or a local volunteer who ran to help during the bombardment and never returned. There are also memorials to those who served overseas, and to the men of the Durham Light Infantry and Royal Navy who lost their lives in service. The variety of regiments represented here give a glimpse into the scope of the Hartlepool's wartime contribution, from the docks to the ships and the platoons that went to France and Flanders. As you walk along the path, you'll notice how the cemetery raises gently towards the edge of the cliff, offering sweeping views across the North Sea. On a clear day, you can see the curve of the coast, the lighthouse and the pier stretching out of the water. It's an outlook that feels both peaceful and powerful, and the kind of view that reminds you how connected Hartlepool has always been to the sea, and how much of its history is tied to it. Despite the age of many of the graves, the cemetery is maintained with care. The grass is neatly trimmed, the pathways are tidy, and many of the headstones have been cleaned or restored. It's clear that there's a sense of local pride here, not necessarily loud or showy, but it's respectful and steady. If you pause near the centre of the cemetery, you can spot the cross of sacrifice, a tall stone cross that appears in many Commonwealth cemeteries. It's designed as a symbol of remembrance for those who gave their lives in the war, and stands here overlooking the rows of graves, facing outwards towards the town. It's a simple but powerful monument, and one that ties Hartlepool to the wider network of remembrance sites across the world. For those interested in local history, Spion Kop is linked to some of the town's maritime heritage. Several sailors from ships stationed in the Tees and Hartlepool area are buried here, as well as men who worked in the docks and shipyards. There's the stories of lifeboat crews, fishermen, and ordinary townspeople who lived through wartime hardship. Some families have generations resting here, with newer graves standing beside those that are over a century old. Away from the military sections you'll find older Victorian and Edwardian gravestones, larger, more ornate markers, curved with angels, crosses or maritime symbols. Many are inscribed with local names that still feel familiar today. It's fascinating how a small town's past can be traced through these stones, how families grew, worked and stayed connected to the sea. There's also a poignancy to the way the weather has shaped this place. The salt air has softened many of the inscriptions, the metal gates have rusted slightly, and some parts of the older graves tilt gently towards the sea, as if time itself is leaning in. But that's part of the beauty here. It feels real, lived in, part of the landscape rather than separate from it. Walking slowly towards the upper end, the view opens wider still. On one side you can look across to the Headland historic buildings, St Hilda's Church rising in the distance, the old town walls, and the mix of cottages and terraces that have stood here for generations. To the other side there's an endless line that stretches out into the North Sea, with some ships visible far out on the horizon. It's easy to imagine the people who once stood here, families visiting loved ones, sailors taking a quiet moment before heading out, or townsfolk paying respect after the 1914 bombardment. In many ways little has changed. The view, the sea breeze and the sense of peace are all still the same. One of the interesting details of Spion Kop is its technical extension of the old St Hilda's burial ground, which lies further inland near the church. As the town grew and space became limited, this site on the hill was opened up as a new cemetery, one that could give both civilian and military needs. The name gave it character and the location gave it presence. Even today it stands as one of the most striking place cemeteries in the northeast. For visitors it's a quiet and contemplative stop. There's no crowds, no ticket booths, no information panels or guided tours, just the space itself. You can take your time wandering, reading the inscriptions, letting the atmosphere sink in. It's one of the places that reward silence, where the stories speak through the stones rather than through words. And yet it's not a sad place. There's a calmness here, almost a reassurance. You feel the history, yes, you feel the continuity of life. The sea keeps moving, the grass keeps growing, and the town carries on just below. It's as if Spion Kop quietly watches over it all. For anyone exploring the headland, this is a spot worth including, whether you're drawn by the history, the view, or simply the peaceful setting. Spion Kop Cemetery captures something very real about Hartlepool's character: resilience, remembrance, and a connection to place. It's easy to see why many locals come up here, not just to visit relatives, but to take in the view, to reflect and to remember. In a world that moves quickly, places like this slow everything down. They're reminders of what came before, and how much of the town's history is written, not just in books and museums, but right here in the landscape itself. Spion Kop Cemetery may not be large, but it holds a breath that's hard to find elsewhere. It's a place where the past feels close, where you can trace outlines of lives lived, battles fought and stories remembered. When you finally leave, walking back towards the Headland streets, there's often a moment of quiet thoughtfulness that stays with you. The sea air, the gulls, the sight of those old headstones against the sky, all small reminders that history is never far away. So if you find yourself in Hartlepool, take a short walk up to Spion Kop. It's a simple visit, but one that lingers long after you've gone. A small hill with big history, overlooking the sea and standing overwatching the town. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like, share and subscribe, and take care of yourself.